Welcome in, everybody, to a special edition of Inside the Burrow. Robbie LaStella, Kevin Fielder, joined by the man himself, FAU Athletic Director Brian White. Brian, thank you for joining us. How's it going?
Of course, it's going great. Thanks for having me.
It's been a busy past, I guess, 3 weeks for you. First with Coach Kitley, and then two back-to-back awesome moments for FAU, the Haggerty donation, and then the stadium naming rights deal with Flagler Credit. It's obviously not like a basketball game with momentum, but how huge is it for the athletic department to have these deals to close out the year? And do you try to build on them early into 2025?
Absolutely. No, it's huge. I mean, especially, both of them, you look at, the Haggerty gift and it's to complement so many other generous gifts and gestures they've made over the years. It's incredibly important for all of our 19 sports. And, they've done so many things that'll benefit us for so many years to come. So we're thrilled about that. And, the Flagler Credit Union naming is something that, I think will make a big difference for this place for many years to come as well. So both transformational gifts that for us as we grow our stature as a hometown team and the very best hometown on the planet and very generous wealth in this community that we think we can continue to build on that momentum.
And, we talked about the stadium naming rights deal at length on Tuesday, but I want to ask, was that something that was a goal when you were first hired back at FAU? And is now that you have it for the football stadium, is there any idea to potentially, name other stadiums or facilities on campus, whether it's a softball, baseball, swimming facility, anything like that?
Robbie, I got 3 kids, and you can name any one of them for the right price. No, we will name anything. Absolutely. For the right investment level and the right partner. It's something that we've discussed in terms of stadium naming, and there's been several opportunities over the years, but none that we felt like were the right investment level, the right fit. And then this most recent effort was a concerted effort to go to market and talk with several companies at the same time. We went through a thorough process, in some ways similar to a coaching search where we just made a decision that we were going to put a name on the stadium. And it was a matter of finding the right partner, the right investment level, and the right partnership. And so we pulled together a lot of assets and both campus throughout the athletic department to try to complement it. Naming shouldn't be just slapping a logo on a building. It really should be a true partnership where both Flagler Credit Union and FAU can benefit in many different ways, and it complements each other. So I think that was our goal, and we couldn't be more thrilled with where we ended up.
The exciting part to me, a whole thing's exciting, but something I heard from Brian Waldron, which left me intrigued for the future because you never know how NIL and all that is expanding. But, he said he's open to any opportunities that will enrich people. And so to me, that seems like, there's potential options there for future re-engagement with Flagler Credit in different areas. Is that something you see as well?
Absolutely. I would say the need for new revenue streams has never been greater in the history of college athletics. So this is obviously a gigantic new revenue stream for us that's going to be extremely important for our success. But with partnerships, we're always looking at ways we can grow partnerships in a complementary fashion.
And, kind of shifting gears a little bit, now we're a couple weeks into the Zach Kitley tenure here at FAU. But, I want to go back, your decision to move on from Tom Herman, obviously not an easy one, but why did you feel like this was the right time to make a move?
You're right. These decisions are not easy, very difficult. And for us, just direction of the program, obviously, a lot more complex than simple wins and losses. We all know where we were record wise the last couple of years, but also just direction of the program, and we felt like we needed a new voice, a new leader in terms of the head football coaching position.
And, kind of a little bit of a follow-up. It kind of seems like a lot of the AAC teams made a move this offseason. Is there any potential thought to why that was? And is it, do you feel like maybe all of the AAC teams are seeing, the changes in college athletics and want to get ahead of it? I know you can only really speak for yourself on that, though.
Yeah, hard to say for anybody else. I look at it as more of a coincidence than anything else, a little bit of an outlier. I don't think that there was a necessary theme within the AAC that this was the year for coaching changes. Just a coincidence in the way it lined up.
And Kevin, you can go
Brian, something that I found interesting was the men's basketball hire comes from a Big 12 school in Texas, and the football hire follows a similar suit. Was that just pure coincidental that they're both Texas-based Big 12 coaches, or was there, I guess, some looking into the Big 12 and looking into some of these conferences and finding ideal fits for the university?
Total coincidence. But I did think about it. Was not lost on me as we ended up zeroing in on Kitley. We definitely thought through that it was a funny coincidence. But no, for us, we had a profile like we did with both searches. I think there are some themes, highly respected assistant coaches that we were able to do a lot of research on with many people that have worked around them, worked with them. And obviously the data and the analytics back up the numbers he's produced are pretty incredible. But the research we were able to do behind the scenes backed all that up as well. Innovative offensive minds. So we're really high on both of them, but merely a coincidence that they both come from Big 12 Texas schools.
I think the thing that's interesting is I think ancient to some degree thinking is that if you are a school in Florida, you have to hire a coach with Florida ties. And I guess we've seen that shift because other schools in the area have also not hired guys with deep Florida ties. Was that a priority? Was it hiring the best coach and then we can sort of figure that out later?
Hiring the best coach was the priority. But I do think Florida ties are important. And I think that was one thing, one of the first questions we asked. We had a list of 65 questions. And with some candidates, you get through 12 of them. And some candidates, you get through 60 of them. It just depends on how long or short-winded a given candidate might be. But that's definitely an early question. And there's 7 or 8 questions about staffing on our sheet. And one thing I definitely wanted to hear, and I heard from most people because it's a logical thing, is in building a staff of their assistant coaches and their support staff that ties to the area would be a priority. We couldn't have, I think, a coach come from Texas, let's say, and hire an entire staff and support staff that never had any connection to the state of Florida. I think that would be difficult. That being said, I think making it the number one priority within your head football coach and not hiring the best overall head football coach possible would also be a mistake. We worked with a data analytics company, and they actually said the number one error that they see in coaching hires is universities putting an overvalue on regional ties and someone being an alum. So those things we thought were pluses, but it definitely wasn't something that we were going to make dictate who we decided our next coach should be, rather than hiring the best coach overall.
Real quick, going back to the naming rights, the new era of college sports with the potential revenue sharing and the house settlement that's coming down the line. How important is it to secure one of these now, knowing that in just a few months, college football and college sports in general could be entirely different for everyone?
Extremely important. I would say, I think I mentioned earlier, but I don't think there's ever been a more critical time in the history of college athletics for growing revenue streams, for developing new revenue streams. That's where everybody's mind is. Obviously, the most important thing is graduating student athletes, and we mean that, and the results show that we mean that. I think that college athletics, we're all focused on the numbers and the dollars right now more than ever. But we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we're developing young people, and there's great opportunities within college athletics, and the value of getting a degree and becoming great leaders and future members of society, et cetera, are of utmost importance. All of that being said, in the new world, our ability to do that and create a great student athlete experience, and part of the student athlete experience is winning. Our student athletes have a lot more They don't participate in sports just for the exercise. They want to win at the end of the day, and that's what our fans want. That's what our community wants, and we're trying to grow our fan base, our university through exposure. Our mission, we always remind ourselves, create a brighter future for FAU through student athlete success. We want student athletes to be successful. And for that to happen, I think that in this new world, revenue growth is, as I said, more crucial than ever.
Kevin mentioned revenue sharing, and I'm sure the specifics around that are as solid as NIL right now. But from what you've heard about it, what exactly do you know? And I've heard Tim Pernetti mention, the potential unification of the AAC around revenue sharing. Is that something you have had discussions with him about? And if so, what's it been about?
Yeah, Tim's doing a great job as our commissioner, and we are having regular conversations amongst all of the athletic directors. I've had individual conversations with Tim about it, and as well as our university leadership. So we're definitely going to be competitive in the new world, just like we have been in the NIL world. Our plan is to be very competitive in the new world for our level. And we're still working through all of the details of exactly what that might entail, as everyone is. But we're definitely communicating well as a conference, and our plan is to be competitive at FAU.
When you made these past two hires in between Jacobs and Kitley, they're both young guys who haven't had that head coaching position before, but that could be a good thing. When you were making these hires, was it a focal point to kind of get a guy who could adapt to all these different changes that you don't even know what's next? Now you got JUCO guys playing 6 years.
A little bit, but I would say more so it was hire the very best person. With both, we cast a wide net. We interviewed a ton of folks, and more than that, we talked to a ton of folks behind the scenes about the people we interviewed, because I think you learn something in a 1 to 2 hour interview, but what you can learn about a person behind the scenes as well is always critically important to us. So for us in both searches, we looked at people with different profiles than the person we ended up hiring. We looked at every different type of profile, but at the end of the day, in both searches, those were the two that they were the only ones offered the job. They were the target. Once we had done our interviews, we felt best about those two. They really stood out to us.
Brian, you've hired quite a few coaches in every sport since coming to FAU, and not just football and basketball, but women's basketball and softball as well. What's the biggest thing that you've learned from, I guess, that first coaching search to now, when you're, I guess, the seasoned vet in this, where you've sort of had to go through the search firm and had to go through these interviews? What's sort of the biggest thing where if you look back, you go, wow, this is entirely different than what it was even 3-4 years ago?
I don't know that it is that much different. I would say the longer you're at a place, the more you learn about the place. I think fit is important, but also hiring the most talented person that really, really wants the job are two key components. Someone that's going to connect well with student athletes, and someone with a proven track record of success. And I think, it's hiring in any industry is very difficult. The more information you have, the better chance you have to make a time. So I think just the information gathering behind the scenes is always critical to complement what you see on a paper resume, and what you can learn as much as possible about a background to complement the interview. I think the interview is important because I think candidates being able to connect in an interview and connect through a search process helps indicate whether or not they're going to be able to connect with student athletes and recruits and fans and donors alike. So I think it's a myriad of factors.
On that topic, how much of these interviews and how much of this search focuses on scheme and stuff that is on the field, and how much of it is, I guess, getting to know the person that you'll be spending a ton of time with, that the fans will have to rally behind? So, I mean, is there sort of a balance of, we have to obviously find someone who knows how to coach a football team, but we also have to find someone who can go into a donor meeting or go into a meeting and impress everyone, including yourself.
Yeah, I think it's a balance. I mean, absolutely. Because I mean, there's great X's and O's minds out there that frankly, uh, you may not. I may not be as confident that they could lead a football team and go into an in-home visit with mom and dad and convince them that Florida Atlantic is the very best place for their son to go to college. And I know we have the portal now, and recruiting has evolved in many different ways. But high school recruiting is still very important at a place like Florida Atlantic. So I think it's several different factors. We weren't, or I wouldn't recommend or believe that anybody should be married to an X's and O scheme. But you do want to hear. I do think it's important that we hear what the scheme is that a coach is going to run offensively and defensively, what the plan is, the recruiting philosophy, the recruiting strategy, the building, the staffing structure, all of those things. You want to hear about the plan. And it might be that some plans are different than others, and that may not be a bad thing. Coach A may want to run a different scheme than Coach B, but more importantly, how confident are you that whatever their scheme is, because you can win in different ways. Whatever their scheme is that they're capable of implementing it at Florida Atlantic successfully.
And something else that's changed recently is, well, at least we're hearing is teams thinking about how they schedule football non-conference schedules. From what you've seen from the G5 side of the college football playoff, has your scheduling approach for the non-conference changed at all? And what's that? Is there any thoughts to that open date next season yet?
Yes, that open date for next season is I would call it a technicality. I think it should be announced very soon. We know what it is. It's just a matter of announcing it and getting the contract finalized. But I wouldn't say that we've made a change in our scheduling philosophy. For us, obviously we have our 8 conference games. I think scheduling FIU here locally is a good thing to do, and makes sense for both schools and honoring that game. Playing one Power 4 conference type game a year, not 2, not 3, but 1 per year, seems like a reasonable approach. Also playing 1 FCS per year, and then playing another Group of 5 type school. We think is kind of our scheduling philosophy moving forward. We think it sets us up to have a competitive schedule, but not overschedule.
Switching gears a little bit over to basketball, it seems like the team has kind of gelled over the past 3 games. But to me, early on in this season, what's really been exciting to me is the development of guys that are not from the United States. I mean, Nico Moretti's been here for a while, but Baba Miller started overseas. Matas Vokatitis was overseas. When you have a program like FAU or FAU basketball that's succeeding with international recruiting, does that help the other departments at all? And is that something that you maybe want the athletic department to take a bigger focus on?
No, I would say our other sports do a great job of international recruiting, and they have for some time. I remember early on, one of my first things on the job was meeting with every head coach individually within that first few days in the office. And I heard that theme from a lot of our sports, that we have a lot of success internationally. And in many ways, sometimes a Power 4 brand, may stand out to an American kid versus a Florida Atlantic, compare Florida Atlantic to Florida State. But one theme I kept hearing is internationally, a lot of kids, they don't know the difference between Florida Atlantic and Florida State, but they know Florida Atlantic's in Boca Raton, Florida, and they can see it on a map, and the area it is, the beauty of the campus and the location. So we think we can recruit internationally very, very competitively. Miami Airport not being far away and flying, almost anywhere in the world. It's that to us is a big potential upside. That was actually, part of the appeal with Coach Jacobs and his background. We felt like, Boca Raton could lean heavily into and could benefit international recruits. If you can recruit kids to a lot of college towns around the country, that international kids end up playing in, I think you can recruit them to Florida Atlantic and Boca Raton. You look at the NBA, how much more international it's skewed. The international basketball game has really improved. And so I think that's a big potential for us. But like I mentioned, in all sports, a lot of our coaches have done really, really well internationally. A lot of that's relationships, and they've built them over the years. And as we're able to recruit those student athletes and they come here and have a lot of success, that helps us recruit the next one. So that's a momentum game as well.
We've talked a lot of football. We've talked a decent amount of basketball, but our other programs around here have a lot of success too. Softball off an NCAA regional. Baseball rebuilt the team after a little bit of a down year, but Coach Mack will be back. How important is it with these other programs? I'm sure it's not just up to you, but to make sure that they receive some of these NIL opportunities that maybe football and basketball get heavily compared to them.
It's very important. We want to have a great student athlete experience for everybody. And part of that's winning, and part of that's the resources we're able to provide our student athletes. And I think that they're connected. If we're able to provide better resources to those programs, either through rev share or NIL or better nutrition, whatever it is that we're able to do, we're invariably going to have a better student athlete experience. And that leads to, I think, better recruiting and winning in the long run. So that's definitely of critical importance, and we're really excited about. You mentioned baseball and softball, but there's a lot of programs that are having historical levels of success, and I think it's going to be a fun spring. Heading into baseball and softball seasons.
I know we got to have a golf player back in the NCAA tournament. I thought that was pretty cool last year as well.
Absolutely. I mean, why wouldn't we be good in golf? So,
Brian, I want to shift from just sort of away from athletics for a minute, and for yourself to, I guess, see your family grow in Boca. And, from the first time you got here to now, what's your favorite part about, I guess, living in Boca and having to, build a family in Boca? Because so many people, I guess, want to do that, but to some degree are unable to.
Yeah, great question. And this is going to sound like whatever, but everything. I mean, honestly, this is the living in Boca Raton has just been incredible for my family and I. I mean, we think about it all the time. My 9-year-old was, I think she was 2.5 at the press conference. And she was sitting in the front row, kind of interrupting me at times. And now she's 9 years old. We just went to her theater performance the other night on campus. They've loved growing up here. Just the young kids in Boca Raton. My kids are outside playing on in the neighborhood on the street barefoot. They don't wear pants very often. My 7-year-old for years called them the long ones. And anytime you try to put on pants, she would scream at you and say, "Not the long ones." So now we're 9, 7, and 3. And my wife loves it here. The community's been great. We've made some really great friends in the area, and we love living here. Everything about it.
I guess pivoting that to the athletic department as well, how much do you try and involve, I guess, your family in events and going to some of these games that FAU is playing, whether it's the NCAA tournament for men's basketball or I guess some of these higher profile in-state games? How much do you try and balance, having to go to show face and do your job, but also ensuring that your children and your family get to experience some of those things as well?
As much as possible. I think that for me, that's how I grew up, with my dad being an athletic director. If we didn't go to stuff, we wouldn't see them. And so we tried to go to as many games and practices and stuff we could go to, and we loved it. We enjoyed it. We kind of grew up around the facilities. And so I do think, like, my kids are diehard Owl fans. Especially my 9-year-old, if we're watching a game at home on TV, I mean, it's stressful to watch it with her. And when things don't go well, she turns on me. She's screaming at the TV. She may be our most obnoxious fan. Good times and bad. But so I think it's important that they live it and that they enjoy it. And I think hopefully it sends a good message to staff and coaches as well that, we work long hours, we work nights and weekends. And so if your family can be around, then, it's, to me, it makes it a whole lot better for everybody.
Brian, I want to ask you one more thing before we let you go. Obviously, the holiday season is right around the corner. You haven't had much off time. So what is the Brian White family holiday plans here in beautiful Boca Raton?
I'm looking forward to just laying low. My mom does every other year with my side of the family. We all got to get together. So last year we all had to go up to Durham, which is, taking my whole crew up to Durham with presents in tow and everything that goes with moving Christmas. It is a lot. We love to do it every other year, but this is the year off. So we are going to lay low, and then we'll visit Paige's family in the summer. So we're looking forward to some time in Boca Raton. We'll actually slip down to the Keys with a few other athletic directors and their wives that we're friends with, and spend a night in the Keys with them. But for the most part, we're just going to be hanging in our neighborhood. We have a block party for New Year's Eve. That's a big deal. It's been a tradition the last 4 or 5 years, and so we'll plan on the block party and not much else. Watching some football, and of course we'll have a lot going on with everything college athletics these days. But that being said, I'm looking forward to slowing down a little bit and spending some good quality time at home with the family.
Brian, real quick, what's the White family's favorite Christmas movie? Because that's the only topic that I think people care about sometimes.
Wow. So personally, my favorite movie of all time is It's a Wonderful Life. Not even Christmas.
Good answer.
My wife and I's favorite movie is probably Four Christmases. And that's I don't know if you've seen that one, but anything Vince Vaughn,
I have, yeah.
And Four Christmases, seems like we quote that one year round. With the kids, probably it's hard to get one they can all watch. Because my 9-year-old has to tolerate it, and my 3-year-old has to be able to pay attention. So if we're including kids, probably like maybe How the Grinch Stole Christmas, one of those cartoon types.
That's always a solid answer, though. Solid Christmas movie. So I have no qualms with those answers.
What's yours, Kevin?
I am impartial to Elf. I am still impartial to Elf. I know that's a very cliche answer.
No,
but
I
love it. And also, Die Hard is a Christmas movie, regardless of what people say.
100%. Couldn't agree more. Nakatomi Plaza. Let's go. Robbie, who do you like?
I love Home Alone. Got to be a big Home Alone fan for me. That's the classic one. But I'm big into my dad loves the animated one. So any snowman movie, anything like that, we watched a lot. So I'm pretty diverse, but I agree. Die Hard's definitely a Christmas movie.
You ever like Die Hard? You ever watch The Ref?
I haven't. No.
That's another similar to Die Hard type Christmas movie. If you're not really feeling, another feel-good Christmas movie and you want to just watch an action movie that is around Christmas, The Ref is a good one.
I'll have to put it on my list. Maybe I'll watch it this weekend.
Yeah. Recommend it.
Christmas movies all around. It's the best time of the year. Brian, thank you so much for hopping on with us. Enjoy your off time a little bit. I'm sure you want to put that phone on D&D as much as you can.
No doubt. Well, thank you.
Right.
Really enjoyed it, as always.
Thanks,
Take
Brian.
care. All right. That was FAU Athletic Director Brian White. Thank him so much for hopping on with us. But it's a big week here still for FAU Athletics before they go on break. Women's basketball is up in the Grand Canyon Tournament. They just won yesterday against Georgia State. And men's basketball is back in action this weekend. They're playing Michigan State. It's a big pivotal matchup. Riding a 3-game win streak, though, Kevin, I feel like, this could be a game where FAU gives Michigan State a bit of a problem. The crowd won't be as crazy as normal. No student section up there at Michigan State. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. What's your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, you sort of mentioned it. This feels like the best time to be able to play Michigan State because the biggest thing is when you play Michigan State, you got to play the crowd as well. If you're going to travel to East Lansing, you can't just play Michigan State. You got to play Michigan State. You got to play one of the greatest coaches in college basketball history in Tom Izzo, and potentially his Grinch sweater. I don't know if you saw that yesterday, Robbie, with him and Oakland head coach Greg kept doing that. I don't know if John Jacobs will be wearing a Grinch sweater, although I think that would be really funny. But I mean, you also have to play the crowd. You have to be able to battle the crowd when they're students on campus the entire time. And so it's perfect for FAU, I think, to some degree, to be able to play them over winter break, to be able to play them on the back of a 3-game winning streak where, while it hasn't been perfect, they figured out ways to win games. And I think that was something that you and I had talked about sort of earlier on in one of these shows, is that, they have to figure out ways to win. They've got to figure out ways to close out games and win these games. And so there is, quite frankly, no better time. Now, I will also say this Michigan State team might be one of Tom Izzo's best over the last few years, because they made the Sweet 16 a few years ago in Madison Square Garden with FAU. They had played, obviously, K-State, but this feels like one of his best teams. And they're deep, and their starting five finds ways to suffocate you. And so it still won't be easy, but you are absolutely right that, man, maybe playing them over winter break might be the best thing for FAU.
Yeah, for me, what's intriguing about this matchup is FAU's big guys are playing well right now, which if their size is competing on both ends of the court, that's going to help them stay in this game. And it's really been, Trey Carroll's defense his offense is what's been getting him in the headlines, but his defense has been as good as it's been. Baba Miller has been blocking shots left and right. Caleb Glenn's been doing what he's doing as well, but to me, Matas Vokitaitis had 0 fouls, not one singular foul in the last matchup against Texas State. That's huge. That was a little bit of a struggle for him early in the season, was, balancing early fouls with his playing time. If he's not getting early fouls, he can do what he's been doing over the past couple of games, be that disadvantage to other teams and FAU's advantage, and be just a dominating force down low. The first play of the game, the pass against Jacksonville and Texas State, has been an alley-oop style play to him. Get that going early and get his momentum going early. And I think if he is able to dominate against Michigan State, that's going to help him a lot. But the key to me offensively is going to be the type of 3-point shooting effort that John Jacobs has hoped for. The last game we saw them move away from it. They only shot 17 threes. That was the second least besides against Drake. But Drake took the 3-pointer away. This was FAU kind of doing their own thing and attacking the basket more. But if they can hit the 3-point shot at the clip and successfully that John Jacobs wanted, alongside Matas dominating down low, I think that will potentially brew an upset in East Lansing.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that Michigan State isn't exactly the tallest team. They do have a 6'11" and a 7-footer who sometimes sparingly comes off the bench, but most of their, I think, top 6 or 7 guys are around the 6'7", 6'8" mark. And so if the big men that FAU has, Baba, Matas, and even to some degree Caleb Glenn, if they stay out of foul trouble and they're able to truthfully just be on the court, FAU has an advantage there. And it may be one of their few advantages. And that's not to say like this is David versus Goliath, but this is Michigan State against FAU. This is a top 25 Michigan State team that, barely lost to Kansas. And I don't even remember who their second loss was to. But if you could just find, I think it was North Carolina. Was it North Carolina? Memphis. It was Memphis. I thought it was North Carolina, but North Carolina is not very good this year. No, but it was Memphis. But like, they've played tough teams. Michigan State has. They've played Kansas. They've played Memphis. They've played North Carolina. They've even played teams like Minnesota, that I think is a very solid Big Ten team, and Nebraska, who's not amazing, but still another one of these teams that isn't awful. And so, like, FAU has to find ways to bridge the gap between their disadvantages. And whether that is shooting the ball well from 3 and finding a way to get going early from there, because that's been the biggest question mark, I think, to some degree, is how consistent is the shooting going to be. But they find something to bridge the gap between Michigan State's talent and FAU's talent. They can win this game. Like, I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that they find a way to win this game.
The thing that concerns me is Michigan State's defense. They held Nebraska to 52. They held Oakland to 58. And against Nebraska, Nebraska shot 22 triples. They only converted 4 of them. I haven't watched the film of that game, but I'm going to say that it was maybe an off night for Nebraska, but I'm going to say that's more Michigan State's defense. And so, we've seen FAU be able to pivot away when their 3-point shots aren't falling. But in my opinion, if they're shooting 22 triples and they only hit 4 of them, that's not going to be a recipe for success. They have to find early in the game, if those shots aren't falling, if Michigan State's taking them away, whatever it is, if it's coldness, if it's defense, they have to adjust. They have to find ways to attack the basket. Because if they get into a big slump like we saw in some early season games, this game will get away from them quickly. But if they can keep it close early on, this FAU team's been in so many close battles now. Being in a 1-2 possession game late at Michigan State, especially without the fans there, is not going to phase them. But they have to get to that situation. They can't have an early slump where the offense shuts down and then they find themselves down 20. I don't think they come back from that.
Yeah, this is the one game where you have to start fast. If you're down 15 points after 5, 7, 10 minutes, good luck, because Michigan State, you're playing into what Michigan State wants. I did look at the numbers. -20 or +21 net rating for Michigan State is astronomical. Yeah. That is insane. Their defensive rating is 97.8. Anytime you can get sub 100 on defensive rating, you're an incredible defensive team. And so, man, FAU, it's sounding very similar to what I was saying during the tournament run to some degree. Now, obviously, different team, different circumstance, but they got to find ways to get on a run early. And it doesn't have to be a 10-0 run, but you get a couple 6-0 runs, you get a 4-0 run sometimes, right? You find ways to steal baskets early. You make Michigan State uncomfortable. And that's what you have to do, is you have to be going into halftime with Michigan State going there, dang, man, we underestimated this team. Like, they came out and they were guns blazing, because if you're going into halftime down 8, like, that seems like a very minor issue, right? Going down 8 in a game. But if you're down 8 at halftime against Michigan State on the road, the crowd will still be good. It won't be amazing, but it'll still be a Michigan State crowd. I would be worried if they're down 8 heading into halftime, because that's what Michigan State wants. They want to be up 8 at halftime, and they want their defense to figure out the rest.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting matchup for sure, but I think it's a good tune-up matchup because whether or not they win this matchup, it's whatever. I feel like the at-large discussions are kind of nonsensical at this point, but this matchup precedes Memphis, which the conference games all matter. Even if, you have to win that tournament, you want to be in a position where you're not playing 4 games in 4 days. You want to be a top 4 seed at minimum, so you at least have a couple off days in there. And so this Memphis game right out of the gates will be pivotal because if they can somehow win that matchup at home, that gives them momentum moving into the rest of the conference slate, and it also gives them that 1 game advantage over Memphis. Obviously, they'll have to play them again. But, I think they have to find a way to compete in this matchup and then also be ready for Memphis right around the corner. The thing I'm concerned about with Memphis, though, is attendance. That's it.
Show up. Like, I don't care. Show up. The biggest thing is I hate to do the resume watching thing in December, but it seems like that's what we have to do to some degree, because you want to be able to put yourself in a position where you're not hoping that you have to win the conference tournament. I will say this is very much like perfect world thinking. You beat Michigan State, you beat Memphis twice. That at-large bid becomes a little bit more likely or a little bit more possible. And maybe their early season struggles. Drake looks like a really good basketball team. So Drake may be the quality loss that they need. Charleston, I think, will figure it out at some point, and Liberty is
a good win.
A good win. looking back at it. But if you can find a way to win even 2 out of these 3 games against Memphis and Michigan State, I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that you're looking at a large bid. Now, again, the easiest way to make the NCAA tournament is to not have to worry on Selection Sunday. And, to have to be able to go to Selection Sunday and just go, man, we've already clinched our spot. Doesn't matter. It's just a matter of finding out where we're playing and who we're playing. And so I do think you're right, though. It's like this Michigan State game matters. The next 3 or 4 after that are more important because you don't want to dig yourself a hole in conference play, because that is the one thing FAU can't afford right now.
Yeah, we shall see what happens over these next couple of games for FAU, but I think they're finally gelling the way defensively that John Jacobs wanted them to. The switching, the rotations, the communication is not as much of an issue as it was early on. I think the interesting part of that is a big focal point of your defense is going to be Matas Vokatitis, and his English is not the best. And so John Jacobs has admitted that he has been learning. He's been learning how to call out things in English for the first time, doing all this stuff. And if he's getting to a point where he's communicating comfortably, I think the defense is going to just continue to improve. So we'll see Michigan State this weekend on Saturday, 2 p.m. We will not be there, unfortunately. I don't go anywhere where it's less than 10 degrees outside. But we'll watch on TV with you guys and keep you updated for what we see. I do want to touch base really quickly before we get out of here on football. Recruits have been rolling in. I'm excited to see that FAU has been offering a lot of guys who, they may have these Power 4 offers, but, Coach Kitley's making the pitch like, hey, if you're an offensive guy and you want to succeed, come in my offense. So I think I'm excited with what I've seen so far. The staff that has been built, the Florida connections are there between DJ McCarthy, Devin Santana. Still unsure for sure if Rock will be 100% back on staff yet. But if that one comes out over the next couple of weeks, I think this staff has all the Florida ties it needs, alongside potentially having young gun coaches who knows where they'll be in the next couple of years. But I like the staff that we've been building. And Brent Dewhurst on the defensive side of the ball, who knows exactly what he's going to bring in terms of scheme yet. There hasn't been, besides, multiple answer from Zach Kitley, there's nothing specific yet. But I do think everything has been working out as good as it possibly could so far, besides losing your 2 potentially top scouting guys in Ryan Beer and Jeff Love. But we'll see how they pivot from that. In our interview with Coach Kitley, he's a big believer in letting positional coaches do their scouting rather than the GM, but he also acknowledges that's an important role in today's world. So we'll see what happens, but that's about the only real negative so far. Guys leave in terms of Omari Hayes, Zuberi Mobley, CJ Campbell. Happens. They're rebuilding. So, Kevin, any final thoughts on football before we get out of here?
A good start. Now go get the quarterback who can throw these guys the ball. Maybe it's the guy who was playing yesterday at FAU Stadium, or I guess Flagler Credit Union Stadium. I do have to be correct with this.
That's the most important thing yesterday. First official game at Flagler Credit Union Stadium. JMU beats Western Kentucky 27-17. Another good Boca Bowl with no sponsor this year, just a good old-fashioned Boca Bowl. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's edition of Inside the Burrow. Thank you so much to Brian White for hopping on with us. For Kevin Fielder, I'm Robbie LaStella. We'll see you next time.